So that's a couple lamb chops. Gross, hey? But that's not blood, that's beet juice, because I cooked beets and James said it was okay for him to eat the beets that were cooked with it. And they're in there with some edamame mixed with quinoa, and that has taco seasoning, and then there's cheese and Catalina dressing and avocados and what do you call it, sunflower seeds and cabbage. And for dessert he's having a passion fruit with some oatmeal waffles. He's going to talk about Ezra Pound again, it looks like, and I'm going to give those dogs those pork chops, and then I'm going to come out and talk about TV nostalgia and Walker. So James can talk about that while I Ezra Pound while I give this to the dogs, and I'm also going to give this spaghetti squash to the dogs. We have pretty much no food wastage around here, but the dogs, what we don't eat, the dogs eat, and then what they don't eat, the deer eat.
Yep.
It all works out.
We tend to recycle things, I think, reasonably well. Try to be environmentally friendly. I got my first car, for example, when I was 56 years old. Yeah, that's true. I used to use a bus rarely. That was usually just to go across the river bottom. It's about, I think, 100 feet deep. So, yeah, there.
No, this is for you. This one's for you.
There we go.
There we go.
Anyway, here's a little quote. Where was that? Page 174.
You may as well watch Opie scarfing it down up here. Come on, Opie. Oh, and there's the guy. There's the guy. There you go.
Okay.
And then he can be in the camera too.
Okay. So I'll just have a quick quote and then we can move to reviews, okay? So this is William Butler Yeats, reminiscent. What is going on?
Why didn't you want to be up there? Oh, he wanted to pull it onto the ground. I think he's worried you're going to steal it from him. I should have left the container on the ground.
Anyway, this is a quote from William Butler Yeats, the Irish poet. Talking about Pound. He said, apropos of nothing, Alfred Balfour was a scoundrel. It's Pound.
Nope, he put it back on the deck.
Alfred Balfour as being particularly a scoundrel. And from that time on, he, that's Pound, would talk of nothing but politics, like he was an expert or something. All the other modern statesmen were more or less scoundrels, except Mussolini. And that hysterical imitator, I think that's Yeats' opinion, the guy who's coming up. Except there were all other modern statesmen were more or less scoundrels, except Mussolini. So Arthur Balfour was a scoundrel. He was basically a non-entity for the long-term history. And all other modern statesmen were more or less scoundrels except Mussolini, that hysterical imitator of his. So that's Yeats's opinion. Hitler. All of them were scoundrels except those two. And this guy is making this huge apology. This guy's saying he's a pacifist, he didn't have blood on his hands, all this sort of stuff. This guy is a scoundrel. He was a traitor, not specifically, as far as I'm concerned, to the United States, but to democracy in general. Absolutely shameful. This guy should have been condemned to the death penalty, but automatically commuted to life imprisonment and stuff like that. But you know, he's been this is an attempt at rehabilitation. There was the guy was released from a mental institution. He was put there so they wouldn't have to put him on trial, because back then, after World War II, it was the death penalty for treason. This guy obviously committed treason. They would have had to kill him. But instead of the United States being seen as the relatively left-wing government, Truman, before, well, it was Truman, and then the administration, Republican administration, fairly right-wing actually, Eisenhower administration, they've been kind to this a-hole because they didn't want him to be sentenced to death and have the death penalty carried out on it. So they put him in a mental institution. They're being kind to him, okay? This guy misunderstands it totally. Anyway, go on.
All right, so TV nostalgia. This got top of the stack. And it includes, there's a disc for each of these shows. The Lucy Show, the Andy Griffith Show, the Beverly Hillbillies, the Dick Van Dyke Show, and the Red Skelton Show. And as far as I'm concerned, the best one by far was the Beverly Hillbillies. I loved it so much. I remember watching it as a teen and loving it then. And I love it still, maybe more so now. There's, my favorite episode was the one where, what's his name? Is it Jethro? The handsome son? Where he was mistaken for a dupe. That somebody misheard the names and there was some confusion. And yeah, that one, such a great show. But I loved watching, is it Ellie Mae, the daughter? I loved watching her with the animals. That was wonderful. And anyway, so that was really great to watch. I do have a problem with this, the way this thing is packaged. Only the Dick Van Dyke Show and the Red Skelton Show had a play all feature. The rest of them you had to actually cycle through. And with the Beverly Hillbillies, it was the worst. I guess it was supposed to, the writing was supposed to look like lace maybe or something, but it was really hard to read. At first I'm looking at going, is this in a different language? So I couldn't even tell like what buttons I was supposed to push at first. So that was a little bit disappointing, but the content's here. The Lucy Show, you get color episodes of Lucy, which is great.
First time you've seen that?
Used to seeing that, yeah. So I enjoyed that, and then I suppose I'd put the Dick Van Dyke Show next after that, then the Andy Griffith Show, then the Red Skelton Show. I'm not a huge fan of the Red Skelton Show. I don't like that silliness, but
I liked it when I was a kid, but
I'm sure you did.
Kind of appeals.
But all those faces and stuff, he's a clown. Whatever, you know, you like that when you're a kid maybe, but a little older and it's a little much. So I did like when he was improvising. So when other people would miss a line, like at one point he has I guess it would be a butler or something who's comes in with a beverage for him to drink, and he says he's gonna go make up the bed, but he says bread, and so Red Skelton says, well, I buttered it, I may as well lay in it, or whatever, right? Like, so I liked it when he improvised when other people made mistakes. He was really quick on the draw, and so as an improv actor, excellent, but with the skits, too silly. I didn't like the clown stuff. So that's all. That's why that ended up last. I loved seeing Ron Howard as Opie in the Andy Griffith Show, and I think Opie enjoyed it too because he got to hear his name called a lot. So that's Opie the dog. I watch TV with the dogs.
I think he's
Ron really?
Howard's exactly the same age as
all right. Well, there you go. So I'll be returning this to the public library. It took me a while to get through. Frankly, at the beginning of I think it was only in the first 3 discs, but I think they had some sense to cut that out after a while. But as I remember it, it was just the first 3 discs, but you open up and there it is. It's this introduction with like harmonica music and like a CGI person in prison and the FBI warning, and it was just like, oh, I don't want to have to hear this again. So, I mean, it's bad enough having to go through it and just have to watch it, just wait for it to pass, but having to hear it too, that was dreadful. So, anyway, Walker, the final season, bottom of the stack like crazy. Yeah.
How many seasons did it last?
Oh, I don't know, too long. It should have ended the first season. They should have realized they'd made a mistake. Honestly, when you're making a show, you have to sit back and go, okay, well, who's my target audience? And if you say everyone, you're wrong. It's never everyone, and it certainly is nobody with this one. I mean, you have.
When was that put out? Recently?
Well, I think this would be 2024 this year.
Yeah,
at this
I was going to recommend. I just took a glance and recommend to the people putting it out because I didn't realize it was the last season.
That they
cut out the beard with this. Oh. Man, that's one of the worst beards I've ever seen.
They stuck a beard on Sam Winchester, I think, to make him look more rugged because he doesn't look. He doesn't look like a cowboy.
Face,
and he doesn't really look old enough to have that son, and he has children now that are adults, and you're looking at him going, no, they miscast him, and that's the main problem because you have him in a role that he does not fit, and frankly, you have a lot of people in this role, so they thought, okay, well, let's put a bunch of, you have a African American cowboy, you have a couple who's gay, and let's just put them all in cowboy hats and let's call this a western, and whatever. Brokeback Mountain, there's a niche market for that and whatever, but with this one, there's really nothing. You don't even have, like with the Andy Griffith Show, you had some great music, like with the guitar and some people singing, and it sounded real. There were some banjo playing, stuff like that. And then with the theme, with the opening music and whatever for the Andy Griffith Show, well, it didn't really work so well, and the closing stuff, because it wasn't that, right? But with this, I mean, the music doesn't fit at all for Western sort of thing, and I don't know. I really don't know what to say about this one. It's dreadful to watch. I had a hard time getting through the first disc. I don't know how I made it through to the end. It's that bad. So, how's your taco, by the way?
A little hot, but
oh, I made it too hot.
A lot of water.
Oh, I'll have to bring you some more water now then. Okay, well, you talk about Ezra Pound. I'll get some more water. And Opie's working away on that meat. You need a hand, honey? How'd you do that? I don't know how you did it.
Got stuck. He's got stuck in his. Yeah, spice works really strongly on my palates. Take that drink of water. We're gonna look at more Ezra Pound stuff, actual stuff. So, according to this guy, Ezra Pound, according to Eustace Mullins, Ezra Pound's just a right-on dude. But there was that quote about the only politicians in Europe, maybe the whole world, weren't scoundrels, were Mussolini and Hitler. Thank you for that.
No problem.
It's a lifesaver. I got to put the fire out here. Excuse me. Leon Blum, head of France for a while, 278. Page 278. Pound, here's one of Pound's lines in the Peace and Cantos. Pétain defended Verdun while Blum was defending a bidet. And William Barrett, in the Partisan Review, he was the editor of Partisan Review back then. According to William Barrett, those lines, Pétain defended, that's supposed to be poetry in a cantus. Pétain defended Verdun while Blum was defending a bidet. That's supposed to express a vicious anti-Semitic lie. This guy says My understanding of anti-Semitism is some expression of hate or prejudice against the Jews, either as a group or as a race. Yet the Jews are not mentioned in these two lines. Hey, you know, like maybe they're more poetic than I'm giving them credit for, because in poetry you're supposed to suggest things as much as outright just tell them straight there. When I read them, I had no knowledge that Bloom was Jewish. Like, what sort of planet did you come from? Eustace Mullins. You're supposed to be this big commentator. How come I know it? I had no knowledge that Bloom was Jewish, and only my curiosity as to what Barrett was driving at led me to check into it. Well, okay. Because he called my attention to the fact, I became aware that Bloom was a Jew, yet it was Barrett, not Pound, who had mentioned it. Guess what? I knew that before Pound mentioned it, or Eustace Mullins mentioned it. You know, Barrett was aware of it. You know, it wasn't as though he had to check it out. Like this idiot, Eustace Mullins, had to. He was aware that Pound was Jew baiting when he said that. Bloom was defending a bidet. Pétain, he was collaborating with the Nazis. When the Nazis took over, defeated France, the beginning of World War, I believe it was in the spring of 1940. Not quite the beginning of World War II, but near the beginning of it. Pétain set up Vichy France, which, if we check it out, we'll find out that they were collaborating in I suspect, in the extermination of Jews, for example. I don't know who Klaus Barbie was working for, but he was just one, I suspect, of any number of folks who were contributing to French Jews being exterminated. So yeah, that's an anti-Semitic passage. William Barrett, is that his first name, William? Yeah, he was right. This guy's wrong. Just because he doesn't recognize that Leon Bloom was Jewish, and this is an anti-Semitic passage in the Peace and Cantos by Ezra Pound, just because he didn't know about it doesn't mean that that Barrett is the one who's resorting to racist talk by pointing out that Bloom was Jewish. Céline, Louis Ferdinand Céline, 215, 217. Let's see what he has to say about him. Now, it'll be about Newt Hampson and Pound, okay? On May the 11th, 1942, Pound delivered this guy says an excellent talk, but it was a talk. French Accents is the name of the installment on this little radio program on contemporary French writing. Another talk on this subject, To Be Late, is what it's called, delivered on May the 14th, 1942, was concerned with the work of Louis Ferdinand Céline, whom the transcriber identifies throughout the transcript of To Be Late as Stalin. So he heard Céline, but he was the transcriber, obviously didn't have very much cultural experience. Interesting enough, three of the most powerful talents in Europe objected vociferously, so I put, interesting enough, three of the most powerful smelling talents in Europe objected vociferously to the continued intervention of England and the United States in political affairs on the continent during the Second World War. So continued intervention. So, the United States was out of wasn't in World War II. Intervention, what's that about? The United States, the World War II started September the 1st, 1939. And it wasn't until 2 years later, more than 2 years later, when was it, December the 7th, 1941? You see what I'm saying? So that's 2 years, 2 months later. Now, this is not a kind of war that lasted 10 years or something like that. The war was over, let me see, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and change. We'll say almost 5 years. This is over in, in Europe it was over May the 7th. It was when Germany surrendered. Signed with the Allies on the 8th and 9th, well, with the Western powers, and the 9th with Russia. Surrendered. So, it's over in less than 5 years. More than 4.5 years. Wow, is that? Let me see. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 years. Less than 6 years. 5.5. 2 of those years, which is more than a third of the war, the United States was out of it. Now, Roosevelt wanted to help cure about. Wow, Opie, I'll let you inside so you don't get too cold. Opie doesn't, he's partly bald on his chest and all this sort of stuff. So I'll let you in there. Sorry for going off camera, folks. Get in there, please, Opie. Please. Get in there, please. Okay. Yeah, the other dog was wanting to play with it. Plays rough. So we'll spend this time going in. Anyway. So, yeah. So, Roosevelt wanted to help not just England, but the whole world out in Europe. But, he knew that American sentiment, public sentiment, was against getting involved in that war. Now, one of the, Japanese attacked the United States, and this guy makes some ugly noises. There's this idea that the United States knew that the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor and didn't warn the Japanese about it. The fact that they knew. Yeah, why would you blow the fact that you know their codes? You don't do that. During World War II, apparently the British at Bletchley Park or whatever broke the German codes and stuff like that. You actually sacrifice people. It's a horrible decision to have to make. But you don't want your opponents to know you know their codes. So the Americans are supposed to say to the Japanese, hey, we've broken your codes. You better not attack us at Pearl Harbor. And then the Japanese change their codes, and then they attack you. Brilliant. You don't do that. Did Roosevelt want the Japanese to attack the United States? I don't think so. Maybe. Maybe he wanted to take the Japanese out. You understand, the Japanese, in 1937, this is, 4 years before? They were doing things like the rape of Nanking, 100,000 dead. Rape of Shanghai, no one's ever used that term, I think, but they could. 100,000 people dead. And then, in the wake of, and of course this stuff continued. So in the wake of Pearl Harbor, they stomped into Singapore very shortly. I gather 100,000 people dead, 60 to 100,000. Manila, they kicked the Americans out of the Philippines, and then they proceeded to kick a lot of people out of existence. The story goes, according to one account, that over 100,000 people killed there. What sort of killings were those? Well, like a rape of Nanking, it was, there were a few officers, Japanese officers, who had a little competition going with, I gather, including civilians, not just military people, but maybe it's just military people, still a war crime. They would have competitions to see how many people they could behead. like Chinese people. They get behead with their fancy samurai type swords. Fun times. You know, you got to take people like that out. Same sort of thing with the Nazis. You got to take them out. And Roosevelt knew about it. But at any rate, what happened in the wake of Pearl Harbor? Now, Roosevelt wanted to declare war on Germany, but he knew public sentiment, even after Pearl Harbor, was against the Americans. This is American public sentiment, was against the Americans going into Europe. He refrained, and then Adolf Hitler pulled maybe the biggest mistake he ever made in his life. He declared war on the United States. So here, you know, like according to this guy and Pound, the continued intervention of England and the United States in political affairs. What's that, affairs? You know, like these are war crimes on the continent during the Second World War. So here are these three individuals: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Celine in France, Knut Hamsun in Norway, and Pound speaking for his homeland, America. These are three of the biggest scoundrels going. This guy was using the term scoundrel, or you know, referring to Pound, talking about scoundrels, and all the politicians in Europe, maybe even the world, were scoundrels except for Mussolini and Hitler. Boy, this guy's moral compass, Pound's moral compass, was so, I don't think he even had one. Well, yeah, to use the term scoundrel about this guy, that's an understatement. This guy was a horrible brute, an apologist for Mussolini and Hitler. Treason. This guy's a traitor, okay? Very lucky not to have been killed. That's what he deserved, the death penalty. Now, like I say, I don't believe in the death penalty other than declaring someone guilty of treason and sentencing them to the death penalty, but commuting them right away. That's what this guy, but this guy deserved to die. Mullen says, oh, he didn't he has no blood on his hands. We don't know. You know, if Pound could have had the effect on the United States of keeping the United States out of the war, he would have had millions of lives, the blood of millions of people on his hands. Okay? Blood of millions of people on his hands. The United States was able to settle the war in both theaters, Pacific and in Europe, in almost like record time. And with, I am going to tell you, even in Japan, minimum amount of casualties. I think it's almost over.
I don't know.
If you check, I'd really appreciate it.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. So
wrap her up.
Minimum amount of casualties. I'd wrap it up for today. But you're going to hear more about this, folks. This guy should not be. It should not have been rehabilitated. He should not have been released from a mental institution. He actually should have been condemned to death. Although, like I said, should have been commuted. Horrible brute. And of course, because he's a poet, he deserved, you know, special consideration. You don't get special consideration just because you're a literary figure. I'm sorry.